Hi, welcome. Glad you could join us for this is going to be a series, a week-long series of real short devotional readings, though, covering the events of the last few days of Jesus' ministry leading up to his arrest, his crucifixion, and his resurrection on Sunday. And each day we're going to be reading together. The readings are not long. Each day there is a reading from the Old Testament, except for today, they're all Psalms. Today we're encouraging you to read the 53rd chapter of Isaiah, and then a short reading from one of the Gospels. And today we've encouraged you to read, this is Monday, we've encouraged you to read the account of Jesus cleansing the temple from Mark chapter 11. Now, all four Gospels, this is a little bit of background, all four Gospels tell the story of Jesus cleansing the temple, overturning tables, driving out the money changers, the people who were selling doves and other sacrificial critters in the temple. And all four of them record it. Matthew and Luke place it after Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem, but it's not 100% clear from Matthew and Luke whether it occurred on Sunday afternoon or whether it occurred on Monday. Mark's gospel here clearly places it the next day on Monday of the week before Easter Sunday. The Gospel of John, just a little aside, the Gospel of John actually places a cleansing of the temple at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, several years earlier, leading to two possibilities there. One is that John rearranged the chronology for thematic reasons, which is not impossible. The other possibility is that Jesus actually did this twice. Now you could say, wouldn't they know him when they put a picture of him up and say, keep this guy out? The temple was a big place. We're not talking about the inner sanctum here. We're not talking about the sanctuary and the Holy of Holies here. We're talking about this gigantic courtyard, this big plaza, this large area surrounding the temple. And could one man enter without being recognized, wreak havoc, and then leave without being apprehended? Sure. Sure he could. So, I don't know. But here in Mark 11, beginning in verse 15, Mark 11, beginning in verse 15, it's the same details in all the Gospels, that when Jesus entered the temple, he began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple, and he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. A couple of details here. Those who sold and those who bought in the temple, what were they selling? What were they buying? It was not the easiest thing to bring with you, if you're an ordinary worshiper, an appropriate animal for sacrifice. There are rules about sacrificial animals. Sacrificial animals have to be without blemish. And rather than you'd have to feed it the whole way there and the whole way back, wouldn't it be more convenient if you could just buy a calf or whatever when you get there? This was the idea. It was for convenience, right? It's a service. And the money changers, you cannot go making your offerings in coins that have pagan gods on them. You don't want to give your offering in the temple with a denarius that has Jupiter on it or something like that. No. But as a service to you, there are certain individuals, certain brokers, who are willing to exchange your filthy pagan money for nice, clean temple money, and, for a percentage. The other specific group of individuals named are the seats of those who sold pigeons. Now, this is where it gets a little insidious. Pigeons are the sacrifice for a couple of different points in life, but pigeons are the sacrifice that's specified for the poor. For the poor. So these guys are on the one hand, accommodating poor worshipers who may not be able to afford to bring their own sacrificial animal, but also, again, they're making a hefty little sum selling to the poor in the temple courtyard. Verse 16, you notice here Jesus says he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. Apparently, not only was the temple courtyard being used as a marketplace, it was also being used as a shortcut. In other words, what is Jesus upset at here? Why does he do this? He does this not because pigeons are evil. He does this not even necessarily because there are people here who are taking a cut of the poor, although that's part of it. He does it. He explains. He says, he was teaching them and saying to them, "Is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations, but you have made it a den of robbers." So the problem here was not just the buying and selling. The problem was that the temple, which was a space with a very specific purpose, established for prayer and worship, and a holy place, being used as a common marketplace, and actually kind of a seedy one at that. So the sin here is not the buying and selling. The sin is the failure to appreciate the holiness of the God whose temple that is. The failure to appreciate the importance of worship according to God's instruction. They were treating the Lord lightly. The chief priests and the scribes heard it and were seeking a way to destroy him, for they feared him because all the crowd was astonished at his teaching. And when evening came, they, presumably meaning Jesus and his disciples, went out of the city. What should we be praying for this week? Well, one of the things we should be praying for, I think, is that God uses this time with its kind of unsettling details as a time of cleansing for his church. Now, it's true. We're not talking about a building. We're talking about people. We're talking about the body of Christ. We're talking about the people of God assembled. Pray that God would cleanse his church. Pray that God would start in your own heart to flip over the things within you that shouldn't be there, to drive out those reluctant sins and weaknesses and ungodlinesses, if that's a word, within. Pray that he would cleanse his church together, that we would be courageous, and that zeal for the Lord would fill us. Pray that Jesus be at work in his church as he was at work in the temple, to drive out what should not be there, and to return us to what we should be, which is a house of prayer for all nations. The body of Christ praising God day in and day out and serving faithfully in this world. Pay attention tomorrow. There's another reading, and we will talk about how we should pray about that tomorrow. In the meantime, God bless you. Stay safe. And let us know if there's something we can pray for you specifically about. Thanks.